Ball Pit, or Ball X Pit, or That Game About Balls and Pits, is all about making crazy character combos, blasting entire screens full of enemies, and chasing that perfect run. Now, you can unlock most of a game's meta progression in 20 to 30 hours. It's pretty darn quick, especially compared to a lot of other entries in the bullet heaven genre. But if you're a sort of person who wants an extra challenge, or you just like making big numbers go bigger, there is New Game Plus and Endless Mode to provide near infinite replayability. And so, with so much cool stuff to do, things can get a little bit overwhelming. Is it better to throw black holes at enemies or to nuke them? Because yeah, that's right, you can literally nuke enemies. And so today, I'm going to break down all of the game's core systems, including characters, balls, passives, and town building, so that you can not only get started, but hopefully win some runs and make your own crazy builds. Now this video is coming out as of a Regal update, and as such it has all of that content. But if you want to see more for future patches, get subscribed, and hey, maybe let me know down in the comments. For now, let's get into things, starting with the characters. Because going into each run, you select your character, and wait a minute, after progressing a little bit, you select your characters, because you can use 2 of them. You select your characters, and get started by selecting your stage. Now, each of the characters have their own quirk, minus the warrior. The warrior is basically an anime protagonist in that their special power is that they have no special powers at all. However, unlike an anime where usually that character gets a ton of plot armor and is actually secretly super OP, the warrior just doesn't have any powers, which means no upsides and no downsides. But each of the other characters have a unique quirk that modifies their playstyles. Some of these are quite simple, such as shooting balls in a different way. Others completely transform the game, such as the tactician who makes it turn-based. Since you get to combine 2 characters, you want to combine characters which synergize with each other, and avoid characters which don't synergize with each other. In some cases, the choices are so terrible, the game just doesn't even let you combine them. So first up, the warrior, who starts with a bleed ball. Pretty good starting ball, but as the default character, no special gameplay quirks. So the warrior is kind of boring, and personally, I would rather a character be interesting, whether they're good or bad, so I don't play the warrior all that much. Next, we have the itchy finger, who starts with the burn ball. Sets things on fire. Now, he has a scattered aim, which means you aren't going to be able to shoot balls as precisely when you're trying to bounce them, though this isn't too big of a deal. But he shoots twice as fast, and constantly launches any balls that are available. Also, he can move at full speed while shooting. In other words, he is completely broken, super strong, arguably OP. Then there's the Repentant, whose balls deal more damage each time they bounce. But once we get to the back wall, they automatically return to the player, which means you can't trap the balls behind the enemies and constantly bounce them for damage. This is a downside in the sense that you can't trap the balls behind the enemies and bounce them for damage, but it's an upside in that if your damage is lower, your balls don't get stuck behind the enemy and trapped while enemies slowly advance on you from the front row. Then there are the Cohabitants, a couple with many, many children, as seen by the fact they use the broodmother ball that spawns baby balls. For each ball launched, a copy is launched in the mirrored direction, so you fire 2 balls at once, but they're always opposite, and balls deal half damage since you're launching twice as many of them. So the half damage thing means the balls they launch deal as much damage as a single ball from another character, but they still inflict twice as many debuff stacks, which can be very helpful. Then there's the Embedded. This is a character that when I first played the game, I thought they were really bad, because the balls always pierce until they hit a wall, so I just fire straight at the enemy. It pierces, then they get stuck in the back. Turns out they are super good, because you can also fire from, say, the right side of a screen, left, across a row of enemies and hit all of them, then it hits the wall, bounces a bunch, nukes a guy, and then ends up bouncing back. Next up, there is the Cogitator, who automatically chooses upgrades. This means your build is going to be random, and it largely scales based on your stat totals and your meta progression, rather than your choices. His starting ball of the laser, pretty strong. Character depends on if you like actually playing the game. Then there is the Empty Nester, who shoots no baby balls by default, and each shot instead shoots multiple instances of a special ball. This can be good, this can be bad, depends on what you're combining the Empty Nester with. One very popular combo is the Makeshift Sisyphus, because the Makeshift Sisyphus also has no baby balls, and his balls do not deal direct hit damage, but instead trigger AoE and status effects, increasing the damage by 4 times. So if you want something like Burn, you want something like Earthquake, his starting ball, you can do absolutely crazy things. Then there's the Shade, who instead of you shooting from your character at the front of a screen, shoots from the back of a screen. This can be very good, it can be very bad. Again, a little bit harder to play someone like the Shade. The Shield Bearer turns this back into Brick Break or Breakout, because the Shield Bearer holds a large shield that bounces all the balls hit, and they deal more damage each time they bounce off the shield. So if you get really close to an enemy, you get a whole bunch of bounces and your ball just nukes things. It's actually really fun on bosses, though many bosses do have angled tiles to prevent you from abusing this. Next up, we have a Juggler, who lobs balls instead of them firing in a straight line along the ground. Because the Juggler lobs balls, they don't start dealing damage or bouncing until they land, which means, say if you have the Shade, you can use the Juggler to counteract the Shade's downside, because now balls start from where you aim them rather than starting strictly from the back of a stage, but you can still hit a bunch of enemies from behind and take advantage of all the crit bonuses. The Flagellant bounces balls off the bottom of a screen. When I started playing the game and I was pretty bad at it, I thought the Flagellant was the most OP character. There are many more OP characters. Actually, the Flagellant, not necessarily the best, but if you're starting out, the Flagellant is certainly very easy to play. Then there's the Tactician, who does something very interesting, and transforms Ball Pit from a real-time game to a turn-based game. So you get to position as much as you want, then you press the fire button, which is left-click by default, and he fires a wave of balls. Then all the enemies take their turn, move for a couple seconds, then he gets to move, fire again, and it continues. The Spendthrift shoots all balls at the same time in a wide arc. Think burst damage. Also, Spendthrift is quite fun. The Physicist, balls are affected by gravity, pulling towards the back of a screen. The Physicist is quite hard to play, you have to really know your angles, and it's much harder to get side bounces. There are some strong Physicist builds. With that said, there are also some bosses, like the very first boss for the Boneyard, that the Physicist sucks at because that boss needs to be damaged from behind, and if a ball's pulled towards the back of a screen, it's, well, pulled past it doesn't bounce off the back. Next up, there's the Radical. He is the Cogitator, but on steroids, because he is radical, so he just plays the game for you. Fun fact, there are times where I've just gone AFK to do something, and I've left the Radical, and the Radical has just beaten the game for me. Like the Cogitator, scales heavily on meta progression and upgrades. Then there is the Carouser, who is new as of a Regal update. The Carouser causes balls to orbit around the player. So, if you have played an ARPG, you play like Bladestorm, Whirlwind, that kind of stuff, this is basically how it feels to play the Carouser. Very fun, but sometimes you're a little too close for comfort, and the enemies do end up attacking you. Then there's the Falconer, where the balls are shot from two falcons on the left and right side of the screen. The Falconer is honestly very similar to the Cohabitants, except instead of it being mirrored so the balls bounce in opposite directions, it's coming from the sides in. Personally, I prefer the Falconer style of firing inwards and getting a lot of extra bounces to the Cohabitant style, but both are quite powerful and both give you a lot of control over screen coverage. And so yeah, those are all the characters currently available in Ball Pit. But how should you put that together to make a build? Well, when you're just able to pick one character, play what you like, experiment. Yes, some characters are stronger than others. I've mentioned a few that I've had success with, but even the worst character can beat the game. So, if there's something you really like about, say, the Physicist, even if he tends to be a little bit harder to play, go for it. Now, once you unlock the Matchmaker, that allows you to bring two characters into a run combining their abilities. At this point, you should start to think about character synergies. For example, the Juggler and the Shade, so that your balls are no longer always trapped in the back. You can still do that just by aiming very close to the top of the screen, but you can also aim directly at an enemy that's approaching you, or change your angle of attack to get more bounces on a boss. On the other hand, if you're increasing the difficulty, maybe going into New Game Plus, or doing some of the fast runs, consider characters that are powerful, like the Falconer. He's powerful on his own, due to how he fires, but if you combine him with the Repentant, now you have a good firing angle that causes the balls to bounce multiple times and gain additional damage. And also, if you're bored of a grind and you want to change things up, consider characters that completely transform the gameplay. This would be the Tactician, for example, that makes things turn-based. The Shield Bearer, that lets you bounce balls again, similar to the original game that inspired this, like Breakout or Brick Break, or the Carouser, where the balls orbit your character. And if you want to go AFK and just get some free stuff, well, use the Radical. Yes, the Radical does rely on your stat totals, so if you don't have a lot of meta progression buildings built up yet, he's not going to be as good. But it gets to a point where even in New Game Plus and beyond, the Radical can just guarantee a win on any single stage. And so now that we've covered characters, let's move on to talking about balls and passives. After choosing a character and picking a stage, you begin your run. Now's the time to start selecting your balls. Choose wisely. You only got 4 of them. Well, 5 with the right buildings, but 4 for now. And passives, so that you can wipe the screen with overpowered combos. Think of balls as your weapons, and passives as your items. They give you all sorts of different bonuses. So, let's get into some more information, and a little bit on all the crazy builds you can make. So when you spawn in, your character starts firing balls at enemies. You can either fire them directly at enemies, which typically doesn't do that much damage, or you can fire them from the side, which does a lot more damage because your ball bounces around, hitting enemies multiple times. And of course, one of the best things to do is bounce your ball so that it gets behind the enemies, hitting them even more times. Though, depending on your build, your balls, and how strong you are, this can be a little bit tricky. As you kill enemies, they drop EXP gems. Collect these to level up. This gives you some stats, and lets you choose an upgrade, which can either be a new ball, a new passive, or an upgrade for an existing one. And so, for example, here, I could take the Radiant Feather, completely new passive, upgrade my Burn from level 1 to level 2, increasing its damage and debuff, or upgrade my Baby Rattle, increasing the Baby Ball multiplier. Both balls and passives cap at level 3. Now, some enemies also drop fusion reactors. These have various options, but the first you're likely to interact with is fission, which gives you 1 to 5 upgrades. Later on, you can upgrade this, and it will give you 3 to 5, basically reducing variance. In this case, it upgraded my Radiant Feather and my Egg Sac. Now, in addition to fission, the fusion reactor has 2 other options. Evolution, which takes 2 level 3 balls and combines them into something completely new. There are specific combinations for each evolution. So this right here is Frozen Flame. It requires Freeze and Burn. This is Fireworks. It requires Egg Sac and Burn. You will only be able to make Fireworks with Egg Sac and Burn. Sometimes there are slightly different variants. So there might be 2 or 3 ways to make something, but it's not like you can combine Egg Sac with every other potential to get a different variant of the ball. If you want to do that, you need to use Fusion. This allows you to combine any ball, including evolved balls, to make something new and apply the effects of both. Such as if I were to apply Freeze and Egg Sac, which would allow all the balls from Egg Sac to freeze. Evolved balls deal more damage than their basic counterparts, and they often have new effects, such as the Fireworks, which explodes. Now, something else you might notice is not all of the balls look the same. That's because there are special balls. These are the unique ones up here like Broodmother, Freeze, and Fireworks. And then there are baby balls. What are baby balls? Well, you see, when a mommy ball and a daddy ball love each other very much, no, they're just normal balls that don't have any other effects, but your character does tend to fire a whole lot of them. And as your leadership stat increases, they do get more effective. There are even some passives that turn your entire build into a baby ball build. Alright, so I grabbed another fusion reactor. This time there are no evolution options, but I'm going to take Fireworks and Broodmother and fuse them together. This creates the Fireworks Broodmother ball, which has similar effects to Fireworks, but in addition, it has a chance of creating baby balls every time it hits an enemy, and the spawned balls from Broodmother, so all the baby balls, have the same property as Fireworks. In other words, they're going to be stacking burns on everything. And this leads into a good way to think about balls. Some of them are good at doing damage. An example of this might be Overgrowth. It applies a debuff to enemies, which, when it reaches enough stacks, creates an AoE explosion doing massive damage to everything around the ball. But others are very good at coverage. The Flicker Ball, for example, allows you to hit the entire screen. So you can build up to create both Overgrowth and Flicker, and then fuse them together. Now the new ball, Flicker Overgrowth, will apply the Overgrowth debuff to the entire screen, causing all of the enemies to explode at once. In addition to damage balls and coverage balls, there are also utility balls. These would be things that inflict special status effects, such as the wind ball that slows enemies, the charm ball that causes them to temporarily turn friendly and move towards the back, and the freeze ball which causes them to temporarily take increased damage and stop moving forward. You can combine these with coverage balls to make your run easier. In addition, there are a few passives which can be evolved as well. For example, combining the Vampiric Sword and the Ever-Flowing Goblet, you can get the Soul Reaver. The Vampiric Sword is honestly more of a downside than an upside, but the Soul Reaver does provide insane healing. So you might want to take the Ever-Flowing Goblet first, spend a minimal amount of time with Vampiric Sword, and reap the benefits. Or, die along the way because you got hit after the Vampire Sword just cut all of your health. But remember, they do take up one of your fusions, and you might want to use that on an evolved or fused ball instead. And so that in mind, what are some combinations to look out for? Well, personally, when it comes to damage balls, I like things such as Hemorrhage, which when you stack enough bleeds on the enemy, deals a % of their health damage, Overgrowth for the AoEs that I mentioned earlier, and Maggots, which inflicts a debuff that causes the enemy to explode in baby balls. Stack other effects that enhance the number of baby balls and their power, and you've got something really potent. Then I tend to combine those with a coverage ball, like Holy Laser, Flicker, Sun, or even a basic Broodmother. This means my damaging balls can hit as many enemies as possible. After that, I'll combine things like Freeze, Wind, or Charm to add those slowing effects and debuffs. For another fun example of this, the ball Black Hole instantly kills normal enemies, and Sun allows it to hit the entire screen. So, all you have to do is fire off a single Black Hole Sun, and you'll instantly kill every non-boss enemy on the screen. Provided you have enough damage to actually kill the bosses, you should be in for a very easy time. Now initially with all this, you are a bit at the mercy of RNG. Yes, you have some control over your upgrades, but for most things, you're going to need to unlock buildings to get banishes, free rerolls, an additional ball slot, higher ball levels, higher passive levels, and an additional passive slot. This not only allows you to be more aggressive and filter things out that you don't want while having more chances to reroll into what you do, but starting your balls at a higher level means it's easier to get those fusion chains going. So at first, don't be surprised if you aren't fusing most of the balls you're playing with, but later on, it's pretty darn easy to get some very powerful fusions going. And so from there, just apply all of your knowledge and take down as many bosses as you can. Each one drops a guaranteed fusion reactor, and in addition to that, the first couple times you kill them, they drop a blueprint, which unlocks new buildings, thus advancing your progression. Also, when you beat the stage boss, you get gears, and you use gears to unlock more stages. Let's wrap things up with a few quick tips. First of which is, it's not always worth picking up a fusion reactor as soon as it drops. Sometimes you want to leave it for a bit. Maybe a ball needs to hit level 3 for an evolution you're trying to go for. Or maybe you just want some extra things for chances at fission upgrades. Tip 2, don't underestimate baby balls. These guys might not look that impressive at first, but they're strong, and there's lots of them, especially if you have items like Cornucopia or Iron Onesie with powerful baby ball synergies. Tip 3, I like picking one damage ball and focusing my build around it. This means if I'm playing something like Maggots with Holy Laser, I want to get a lot of hits on enemies, so I might take the Ghostly Corset. This way, when I aim from the side, my Holy Laser will pass through a bunch of enemies, inflicting all of the statuses on them, which means when they die, they will explode into baby balls, dealing damage and nuking the entire screen. And much like with characters, ball combinations is something which will pick up over time. That said, if you want to know all of the possible ball and item evolutions, let me know down in the comments below because I might end up making a video covering that in the future. Now so far, we've covered the characters you play, the balls you've used, and the passives. That should be about everything, right? Well, mostly. But after each new run, you return to town. This is where you engage with the game's meta progression systems and unlock new characters, add mechanics, increase stats or stat scaling, and even harvest for resources you need to build and upgrade buildings. For me, it took about 20 hours to unlock all of this stuff, though it took a little bit of extra time to optimize my layout and get everything really top shape. But even after you've unlocked everything, there's still plenty of fun to be had, and there are some upgrades which are infinite, so you never technically finish all your unlocks. And so that said, let's spend some time going over the town building. Now first up, there are 3 types of buildings. There are resource buildings, such as this den suite. These can be built infinitely. Then there are warfare buildings, something like the Exorcist, which allows you to banish things. These can only be built once, and they tend to unlock game-altering effects. Last but not least, there are houses. These unlock new characters, and when you level that character sufficiently, they gain a unique effect. So, for example, the villa is a house for the cogitator. But once he reaches level 4 or so, he'll cause nearby wheat fields to regrow faster. Now, when it comes to any of these buildings, it costs resources to build them. That's gold, wheat, wood, and stone. You get wheat from fields, you get wood from trees, you get stone from rocks, and also you find a good amount of these within your run. You can also build gold mines to harvest gold. I haven't done so in this particular layout, but that's very much up to you. Now, some buildings provide a radius effect. So the captain's quarters, for example, a home for the tactician, increases the stat bonus from nearby stat buildings. And as you can see, my layout is such that I have all of my stat buildings, or almost all of them. The new characters are kind of here and here because I wasn't sure where to put them and then I got lazy. But most of my stat buildings are in this little cluster. Similarly, the veteran's hut causes nearby residents to gain bonus experience, so they level up faster. Again, don't worry too much about most of the upgrades on character level up. They're just little harvesting bonuses. We'll get into harvesting shortly, but it's not super important that you min-max those. However, if you do want to level your characters, put their house near the veteran's hut. Other buildings need to be adjacent to resources. The lumberyard, for example, you assign a character if they harvest wood. If there is no wood nearby for them to harvest, you get nothing. Some buildings, it doesn't matter at all. Like the Workers' Guild, this could be anywhere. It has no radius effect, it doesn't benefit from other building radius effects, you can put it wherever. This makes town building somewhat complicated. So what I did is I went to the Steam forums and the guide section, and I looked up someone else's optimized setup. Why? Because I didn't really want to put in the time and effort to min-max it. So go look up a setup. The Steam forums have some great guides on it. I'm sure you can find layouts people shared on Reddit. I'm sure there's plenty of guides out there. Or if you'd prefer, do it yourself. Just try to cluster things around the radius buildings to maximize the effects. But you might be wondering, how do you actually build buildings? Well, that takes place during the harvest action, where you send all the characters and they run through the level. That's right. Your characters are now basically going to be playing the same ball bouncing game, except they are the balls, and you get to harvest a bunch of resources. You just aim them, say here, try to get a bunch of bounces. They will automatically go through wheat fields. So you can kind of use wheat fields to create corridors and funnel your characters. You can hold right click to speed them up. And as you can see, these progress bars are going. That's because they are bouncing on the buildings and helping to build them. They also harvested most of the resources. Not quite everything. They aren't perfect, but close enough. Now, when it comes to town building, I do have a few tips. The first of which is you can sell resources at the market. You can sell 1, 5, 10, 25, or 100. The thing is, after you sell stuff, the price decreases. That's why the price is 1 gold. Normally, this should be way higher, but I just sold all my resources. Now, if you hold the shift key, and both left and right shift work, it multiplies things by 100. So now you can sell 10,000. Because the price increases each time you click the sell, it is better to sell things 10,000 at a time than it is to sell them one at a time. Sell in big bulk. Though that's mostly an endgame tip. Early game, if you have spare of something, just sell it and don't worry too much. Similarly, you can use the rearrange feature to move stuff around. You don't have to delete buildings. You can just highlight them, then click, pick it up, and move it. Also, if the buildings are upgradable, right here, a little command called upgrade with the U key will appear. This allows you to upgrade all the buildings in the plot at once, which is really nice and will save you a headache. I upgraded like half of this manually before I found that out, and I felt real dumb afterwards. And so yeah, those are a couple tips that might help you get your town going, or maybe even min-max it. And remember, if you're missing a building, you're looking for more blueprints, just go into the stage, clear the boss again, or clear any of the bosses again. And so with that, you should have everything you need to know to finally answer the question, is the game's name Ball Pit or Ball X Pit? Oh wait, sorry, no. You should have everything you need to know to complete all of the levels, get to the vast void, and watch the Tower of Balbalon rise. That was the right ending. And so that, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed the video, and if you have any tips to share with other Ball Pit players, be sure to comment them down below. Remember, if you want to see more of my thoughts on the game, then do be sure to get subscribed. You can also hop into Discord and check out my Steam curator page to see my thoughts on other titles too. If there's any other Ball Pit videos, I will try to remember to link them on screen somewhere here, or up in the card, or down in the description below. But for now, this is the only one I'm definitely 100% making. So I guess if you have any ideas, stuff you'd like to know, if you really want to see my thoughts on all the different evolutions, again, comment that as well, and who knows, maybe it'll appear in a future video. And so that's going to be it for the video. Going into this, I wasn't really expecting the whole town building aspect, and it kind of reminds me of another game I played a while back called Loop Hero. That game was a little bit more of an incremental / idle adventure game, where you'd play an adventurer who goes around in a loop, hence the Loop Hero part. But in between rounds, you'd build up a town, get some buildings, and also min-max to gain more resources. Ball Pit very much has that same vibe where there's a little push-pull between unlocking the meta progression and doing stuff in-game. And so, if you like this, you might like that as well. I will try to remember to leave some of my thoughts on Loop Hero down in the comments below, because I did make a video on my second channel ages ago. But anyway, at this point I'm just rambling, so I'm going to catch you in the next one.